I'm curious, McKenna, because first things first, people tend to describe an artist in a certain way, but how do you tend to describe the music that you make?
I always kind of make a joke when people first ask me and say that it's like if Adele was more fun, which is which feels so mean because I love Adele and I think she is really fun, but I think I just do a slightly more upbeat style of emotional and personal music than she does, which is why I started describing it like that.
Who are some of the artists that influenced you when you were growing up?
Oh my gosh. I'm huge on Lady Gaga, Florence and the Machine, Adele, of course. I really love Muse, and the reason I say Muse is because their stage performance, their storytelling, it's unlike anything else. It's beautiful, and I had like an epiphany when I was 9 years old playing Guitar Hero 3 and hearing Knights of Sidonia for the first time. So, and then finally, I listen to a lot of Japanese artists, but Kenshi Yonezu, he's gotten huge recently, but has been doing it for such a long time, and of course was big in Japan. But he writes music. I don't know if he writes everything himself, but the music he sings at least is just so well put together. It tells such a beautiful story most of the time. Huge fan of him as well.
You have a beautiful song out, I don't know right now. I'm curious where the idea came from.
Oh my gosh. So, have you ever been in like a rebound relationship? Like,
Thankfully, no.
oh my God. So, I didn't mean to rebound somebody. It was more like I was in this bad relationship 3 years ago, and I left to go to LA to record this music video. And as soon as I landed in LA, this relationship was over. Like, no chance of it surviving whatsoever. But I was obviously distraught and angry and upset and all of these things and still had to go do my job. And that was something I think a lot of people can relate to, is that the grind just never stops, even when you're going through something personal.
Wow.
Um, and on the last day of this trip, it was like a weekend, I was doing a photo shoot for my album, like press photos and the album cover and all that stuff. And I met this guy on the set there. And I was like, oh, I should not flirt with you or talk with you really because I just got out of a relationship. Um, but I did, and we were together for almost 3 years after that.
Wow, what a fate brought you.
Yeah, so, it was kind of one of those. But I immediately I went home after that happened, after I met him, and I wrote this song like almost 3 years ago now. Um, and was just kind of sitting there going, I don't know how to proceed in this situation. And that's where the song I Don't Know came from.
What's your songwriting process? Do you need to have like a thought of a lyric and then you craft the music around it? Or is there no specific way you tend to always write?
So I we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in depth, but the three main things that I talk about on my platform in general are: one, I'm an autistic individual. Two, I've been through an abusive situation in my childhood, and that's where a lot of my songwriting comes from. And then third is I'm a part of the LGBTQIA plus community. I am a bisexual woman, have been out since 2013, which is crazy to think about that it's been more than 10 years of me knowing my identity, which is great. Um, but most of the time, I write when I hear a melody first. I come up with a melody in my head. Oftentimes, I sit in the car in silence and I'll just like hum to myself stuff. And if I like something or it catches me or I can remember it like a week later, then I'll start writing a song surrounding that. And then when I'm putting the lyrics together, I notice that um, I can't write if I'm in this section of like not having processed a situation or like not having processed an emotion. I literally cannot write. And so when I'm piecing together these lyrics, I notice that I'm finally getting to a stage where I have processed a situation that I didn't even know I was underlying processing. And then I'll put the lyrics together and go, oh, okay, so that's what I needed to write about today. And that's what that
Right.
melody was for. So
How much of a hand do you have then on the production side of the music you make?
I do not produce any of my stuff. I write it. Most of the time, I don't even write chords because I work with my friend John Mook. He's amazing. He's signed with Easy Eye Records. He just released an album, his debut album under Dan Arbach's label, Easy Eye. And um, we started working together 2021, but we met in 2019. He's one of my really good friends. And we have such a good working relationship that I'll write a song, I will record it over a BPM, and I will just send him just the vocal line with the BPM, and he'll build the entire song around it. And I can, of course, like if he sends me something that I don't like, I'll be like, hey, change this. Like that happened with one of the songs on this EP where I was like, hey, I think we should change the timing of this, like change the BPM. I like the direction you're going. Let's just make it slightly slower. And it made the song so much better. So I have like a say and I have control, but his brain is so like he is a musical genius. I say that not freely to most people, but he really is, and can just hear things and put things together that I don't think I've heard other people be able to do. So
You have your second EP, Revolution, coming out. What are some songs on it that hold a special significance for you?
they're all significant in their own ways, and I guess I'll just go down the track list and give a brief explanation if that's all right.
Sure.
I have two songs on there about autism, and these are the first time that I've really like cognitively written about the fact that I'm autistic, I guess. Um, Never Satisfied is about what it's like to be inside my head sometimes, the like chronic anxiety and self-doubt that come with just even waking up. And having to talk myself into going into society because oftentimes you go to a grocery store and I'm like, I don't want to go to the grocery store because there's really bright lights and there's a lot of people and there's probably screaming babies in every aisle and who knows what people have touched on these shelves. But if I don't go to the grocery store, then I can't eat because I can't afford Uber Eats. So it's kind of just that um, heavy lyrical content about having this like weight of having to exist in a society that doesn't understand high functioning autistic people. I have gotten a couple times people being like, "Oh, you talk too well to be autistic," or "You express yourself too well to be autistic," or "You can go on stage, so you're obviously not autistic." And that's like really difficult to deal with as someone who's had um, autistic traits that I've been forced to suppress my whole life. So that song is about that. The follow up song to that would be Queen of Venom, which is about masking. And a brief description of masking for anyone that doesn't know is basically portraying traits that society deems as acceptable and suppressing anything that would be deemed as unacceptable, most of the time meaning general autistic traits. For example, I stim a lot. I mess with my hands all the time. I have a hard time with eye contact, and I sometimes will literally just like stand like this. But I have to like make mental notes in my brain to not do that in certain situations or in public. And what can happen if you mask for too long? There's definitely more to masking than what I've just said, but
Sure.
um, what can happen when you mask for too long is you get this sense of dread and anxiety and self-doubt and sense of worthlessness that in some autistic people that were either late diagnosed or didn't find out until they were older, they have noticed that long exposure to masking can lead to physical illness
Oh,
and
goodness.
like all of these complications and problems and severe burnout and suicidal episodes, which I basically had to get to that point in 2019. I got to this point where I was just suppressing so much of myself that I didn't think I could make it out of it. And so I wrote this song as kind of a like, I'm getting rid of this mask. If people don't accept me for who I am, if they can't handle this part of my identity, then they shouldn't be in my life because it's damaging me and I don't want to damage me anymore. Um, no One Else is a song about um, talking to somebody after the fact of a relationship that was so selfish and only interested in their own ambitions, emotions, etc., that they failed to see you time and time again, but you were expected
Hmm.
to put yourself aside for that person. And so I wrote this song as what I would have said to that person if I had had the strength to at that time.
Oh, okay.
Um, so that song is really fun and really empowering for myself, but it also is like sad to look back on that time in my life and go, oh man, I felt this way. Um,
Where?
and the person that song is about is no longer in my life, so we're good on that. And then the final song, other than I Don't Know, is Monster. Um, and Monster is about, have you ever just met somebody that they're in this stage of their life where the characteristics they're putting out or like the decisions they're making remind you of old bad decisions that you were making at one point in your life, and it frustrates the heck out of you because you're like, just stop. Like I have advice for you, just please take the advice. Like I know what you're going through because I was you at some point, and they just won't. They won't do it. They won't take it. They won't. So
Um,
I wrote a song about that frustration and watching that happen. That's Monster.
you have this beautiful EP coming out. How are you going to celebrate the release?
I think what I'm probably gonna do is put together like a small show at a venue locally and play all the new songs and maybe show some of the music videos that either are out or are not yet out and debut them there and do just a little thing for some fans locally. And I think I'm also gonna do I did this for a project I did a while ago, but I did like a small um Zoom meeting with some fans and just had like maybe 100 people in this Zoom meeting and just was talking, answering questions, showing the new music video. So probably something like that for my international fans so that we can hang out and have a good time.
When you are playing live shows, do you put in like noise canceling headphones or and so that way you can get out of your head and sort of keep your overstimulation down a little bit? Because live shows are also important, certainly to a performer who's got new music out as well.
So what's interesting, I find that I don't use noise canceling headphones during a live show at this stage because the venues I'm playing aren't, I'm not at like stadium level, so it's not, I don't need them yet. But and I found that like in rooms of 800 people, etc., um, I hyper fixate on the audience themselves. I'm watching everybody's facial expressions. I'm hearing if anybody's talking, and if they are talking, what are they talking about? Are they talking about the show, or are they talking about something else and they're not paying attention? And if they're not paying attention, what do I need to do to bring them back in? And that kind of helps me in its own way keep my overstimulation down because it's like a task. um, I find that after the show, after the performance is done, that's when I have the hardest time. Um, on stage, I think it's just because I'm so like lasered in on what I'm doing, the story I'm telling, what the audience is doing, that it's easier to manage and suppress that. But afterwards, when it's like everyone's at the merch table, you hear everybody talking in this line, and it's like I'm trying to have this one-on-one conversation with this person who's right in front of me, but I'm hearing everybody that's in the venue. That's where like I haven't figured out a way to manage that because if I put in noise canceling headphones, then I can't really hear who I'm talking to.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I have a really good team and they help me manage all that stuff. Usually, like before the show, everything is just dead quiet. I keep my room really dark a lot of the time. I won't, I hate turning on the lights. So, um,
Completely
but
understandable.
yeah, just keeping things really quiet, really dark beforehand, and then afterwards getting something to eat pretty much immediately because sometimes when I forget to eat and then that makes it worse. But getting something to eat immediately and then just going back and doing nothing is really helpful, and my team really helps me facilitate that environment.
What are some of your songs then that you truly enjoy playing live?
Gosh. I don't know is always really fun because instead of singing that part in the chorus that's like, I don't know, I'd always turn it to the
Of
audience and
course.
have them scream it. And I was doing that even before the song was out. I would always do this little intro and teach them what to say during I mean, it's easy. It's just the words I don't know, but it gets really loud and really energetic, and people just get really into it. So that one's really fun. On the emotional side, I think Survivor and Ghost are really important. They're from the previous two. So I had my album Survivors from Enlightenment, and Ghost is from Renaissance. Ghost was the third song I ever wrote, and it was a song that I needed to write that was about the abusive situation that I went through in my childhood. And I'm fortunate enough now that my mom, who I was taken away from when I was 15, we're on speaking terms. We're on good terms. I have seen her recently. And I know that as someone who's been through a situation like that, that I'm lucky to have that experience. Because a lot of people can never reconcile a relationship after something like that has happened. She's done a lot of her own work, and we didn't talk for 10 years at all, like no contact for 10 years. And so it's been nice recently to be able to have her back in my life in any capacity. But I wrote this song at this time where I was just so lost, and I didn't realize how much pain and suffering that I had internally still from that. And so I wrote this song as like a way to process the 5 stages of grief throughout one song about her and about um, knowing that at the time in my brain that I would never have that relationship with her again. And I think if I didn't write that song, I mean, through that song, I met my producer, I met my manager, I met pretty much everyone that I'm working with right now because it was so profound to me to be able to basically speak so honestly with people and have them listen and share their experiences with me in return. And so that song is really special every time I play that song. I pretty much can't sing afterwards, so it's
Sure.
I get verklempt. And then Survivor, similarly, I was writing it in that period of time that I was telling you about earlier, where I had this just immense amount of anxiety to the point where I began having thoughts of ending my own life. And I wrote this song to pull me out of it. And when I wrote this song, I showed it to my manager, and he was like, "You need to meet Michelle." And I'm like, "Who is Michelle?" Sure, I'll talk to Michelle. Michelle lives in Austin. She is literally like 4'11, tiny, tiny woman. She had a stroke when she was 5 weeks old. She has cerebral palsy and epilepsy as a result of that stroke. And she's the strongest person I've ever met. And this song, through this song, we decided to partner it because I felt like it was about more than just me and my pain that I was experiencing. It was about anyone who survived anything, you know. And she was a huge example of that. So we decided to tell her story through a comic book that we have that partners with that song. And she is in the book as a real character. You know, it's a fictional story that mirrors her real life, but we didn't want to like give too many personal details about her.
Sure.
But that song's always really special as well because I'll play it live, and then similarly, people will tell their own stories, um, and it always gives me a reason to keep going and remembering that my music isn't about me, even though it is. It's about more than that. It's about the people that hear it and the people that need those messages in the songs. So those three.
Is there a way that you would like to advocate or a way you recommend people get involved in um, helping with people who suffer from domestic violence or childhood abuse?
Yes. Internationally, I'm not as sure about, but CASA is a huge one here. I've done a couple shows with them, uh, and they basically assist children specifically who have been in abusive situations. Um, there are a lot of like the domestic hotline. I know that sometimes they can be really slow to answer, but they really do provide resources and local resources for people that are in situations. Um, and then I would also say finding organizations to donate to that don't take large percentages of the donations and that they mostly go to the victims. I haven't looked into very much organizations that are centered around adult domestic violence situations. But I plan on having, we're redoing my website right now, but having resources for things like the Autism Society um, and CASA, et cetera. And I want to list on there things for adults as well. But just staying in tune. And also, if you don't have financial ways to support, just raising your voice about things, just never letting it go quiet because part of the reason I talk about it so vocally and so loudly is that if you stop talking about it, then that puts the power in the hands of the people that are abusing people. And I think that the more it's talked about, the more people are willing to share their stories, the less likely those things will keep happening because it'll become such an embarrassment for those people who crave power and crave control. If you
Yes.
take that away from them, more than likely it'll hopefully begin to lessen the amount that things like that happen. So,
I know you have your second comic of the series, Monster, coming out, which I
yeah.
think is wonderful. And can people go on your website once it's revamped to purchase the comics?
Absolutely. I also will be selling them at shows. And the monster comic is super important because it does cover more of a domestic abuse situation. The character in there is slightly a self insert for myself, but there are some things that are exaggerated that didn't happen to me, just for the sake of the story and this character. But the intention behind the book is to raise awareness for, in the first book, Survivor, this character is hurting other people through, and not physically, he's just emotionally hurting other people. And Michelle in the book, instead of chastising him for it and pushing him further away, basically goes, I forgive you for being this person. And it changes his life. It changes his
Absolutely.
perspective on
Sure.
everything. And that happened to me. I mean, I, I remember being a broken 13, 14, 15-year old and not being the nicest human being, and I was in that situation. I was going through these horrible, horrible things and didn't have any way to process it. Didn't have anywhere to put that except for onto other people around me. And it did change because of people around me going like, we love you anyways. Like, we love you anyways, and we're going to show up for you anyways. And it helped me be less of a cactus.
Are there some artists you would love to collaborate with on music in the future?
Oh, that's hard.
I
Yes, I
guess
would love to
Nick's
do a.
collab with you would be amazing.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think about this one. I think I would love to do something like Taylor Swift and Florence and the Machine just did Florida. Like if I could ever collaborate with Florence and the Machine in any capacity, I think I'd lose my mind. Um, but I mean, there's some artists out there right now that I really love. Like Spencer Sutherland, I feel like kind of has this really great vibe to him. I feel like he and I would make a good song at any point. We'll have to see about that.
What would you like to say then to everyone who are fans and supporters of the beautiful music you make?
Um, the first thing I want to say is thank you. I mean, I feel like everybody says thank you, but thank you from the broken kid who you saved years down the line, who didn't have hope and didn't think that she would be on stages in front of you, and didn't think she would have made it to the age of 25. Thank you from that kid. um, and everything I do is for you guys. I love you. I'm here for you. I am so blessed to be able to hear your stories and share my music with you and share tears and laughter and anger and joy, So thank you. And I'm so excited for you to hear this project and to play more shows where I can just hug all of you. That's what I got to say.